Game week 40 is done in the Championship and there are some key results. But let's start at the top of the table where Fulham beat QPR by 2-0 in what was yet again a dominant display from Fulham, and yet again Mitrovic scored. He scored twice, scoring his 36th and 37th goal of the season, and he's set to break the all-time Championship record of 41 goals. And fair play to Fulham and Mitrovic because they've had a phenomenal season, they've dominated most matches, and they're on 80 points at the moment, and they'll probably confirm promotion in 3 weeks' time and then confirm the title in 4 weeks' time. So fair play to Fulham, they thoroughly deserve to play in the Premier League. I just hope they don't collapse and flop next season when they play in the Premier League, because that would just be really frustrating. Similar to Norwich, they just dominate the Championship and then get promoted and then not perform and flop. So hopefully Fulham next season can be at the very least competitive in the Premier League. As for QPR, I know this is a London derby, but the worry for them won't be so much that they didn't perform well in this game because Fulham are such a good team. The worry for QPR's point of view is that for the last few weeks they haven't been performing, and they are set now to miss out on a playoff place as they are ninth on 59 points after being in the playoffs for so much of the season. It will be a shame from QPR's point of view if they just miss out now. But there were rumours circulating on Saturday evening that Mark Warburton was set to be sacked, which in my opinion is really confusing because he's done so well since he's come in to build a really competitive team. And now this season, for the most part, they've put in really good performances and done really well. So unless QPR completely collapse now, I'd be stunned if they sack Mark Warburton, and I think it would be the wrong move. But just below Fulham are Bournemouth in second place after their 3-2 win at home against Bristol City. Bournemouth created an XG of 4.52, so that just shows how dominant they were. But to be fair to Bristol City, they did score twice. Andreas Weimann getting his 19th goal of the season, so that just shows how good of a season he's having. But back to Bournemouth, who put in a really good performance today. Siriki Dembele scoring a lovely goal, and you'd think that if Bournemouth had lost this game, there would be a small chance of Huddersfield or Luton catching Bournemouth. But now Bournemouth have played 3 fewer games than Huddersfield and have 6 more points. So I'll be stunned if Bournemouth don't finish second. But just below them are Huddersfield, who have 66 points after their 1-0 win away from home against Hull. Tommy's getting sent off just before half-time really changed the complexion of this game. From then, Huddersfield created the better chances and deservedly scored through Harry Toffolo. But right at the end, Hull almost nicked a point, and it would have been a good point for them. But to be fair, they're still 20th on 41 points, and I'll be stunned if they get relegated. They probably will stay up. They should be fine. But from Hull's point of view, it's more, can they put in good performances from now until the end of the season so they got something to build for next season. But as for Huddersfield, they probably won't finish second, but they look good for a playoff spot, for sure. Then below them are Luton, who drew 2-2 at home against Millwall. Some really nice goals in this game, particularly from Benica Fobe. Really well taken first time finish. And it looked like Millwall had just got the winner, but then Luton, late on, Robert Snodgrass whipped in the ball and Jake Cooper headed it in his own net. So Luton managed to nick a point there. It's definitely a better result for Luton than it is for Millwall, because you'd have to say if Luton had lost the game, then they'd definitely lose track on the playoff picture. But now they're still fourth. They look good. They look good for a playoff spot. So fair play to Luton. They're having a phenomenal season, and if they can reach the playoffs, it'll be an amazing job by Nathan Jones. As for Millwall, they're still in the playoff picture. They're on 58 points, and they still could catch the likes of Blackburn and potentially Middlesbrough, because Millwall have played 1 game fewer than Blackburn. So if Millwall win, they'll only be 1 point away from Blackburn. So fair play to Millwall, because after 39 games, for them to still be in a shout of a playoff spot is all credit to Gary Rowett and the team. Just below Luton are Middlesbrough, who beat Peterborough by 4-0. A really disappointing display from Peterborough, because you'd suspect that Grant McCann, he's just come in as Peterborough manager, back again, and they had a 2-week international break where they had the chance to regroup and plan for the Middlesbrough game, and to put in the performance that they did was a bit disappointing, to be honest. Although Middlesbrough did score the first goal through a stunning strike from Marcus Tavernier, who's having a really good season. Fair play to him and Middlesbrough, because not just that, but some of the other goals were really well taken by Middlesbrough, and they definitely deserve to win the game. And they're fifth now, so they're looking good for a playoff spot, especially given that they've got 2 games in hand over Huddersfield. So it'll be really interesting to see whether they can finish in the playoffs. Then, just below Middlesbrough, you have Blackburn, who have played 40 games and are on 62 points after their 2-2 draw away from home against Coventry. Blackburn putting in an okay performance, but I think one of the main stories was the fact that Bradley Dack scored just after half-time. It was great to see him score after he's been out injured for over a year, which is a massive blow for him and Blackburn. So the fact that he's come back in the team and scored so quickly is a testament to him. As for Coventry, they managed to score another late goal. Fantastic from them and Victor Gyökeres, who is having a fantastic season. And I would say Coventry are still just about in the playoff picture. They are on 56 points after playing 39 games. So they are well out of it in that sense. But I would say they're still just about in it. If they can, pick up a few wins in a row, you never know. Then, just below Blackburn, you have Nottingham Forest, who have only played 37 games and are on 61 points after their 4-1 win against Blackpool. Brennan Johnson, the star of the show, what a season he's having. A brilliant talent, and you can see why a number of Premier League clubs are after him, such as Brentford. Forest just putting in a really good display, scoring some really nice goals, and obviously the key advantage for them is that they've played 37 games. That's 3 fewer than Blackburn and Huddersfield. So it's definitely in Forest's hands for sure to finish in the playoffs. As for Blackpool, they didn't put in that good performance on Saturday against Forest, but for the most part this season they've been in most games, and for a team that have newly promoted, they've done such a good job, and for the most part this season have performed really well. So Neil Critchley and the players deserve a lot of credit. Then you have Stoke, who beat Sheffield United by 1-0 in what was a pretty boring game. Not too much happening, and it's a big blow for Sheffield United. They've lost a lot of ground on the playoff picture. They're still in it, but to lose in the manner of which they did was pretty poor. As for Stoke, I think Michael O'Neill is he's basically playing these matches to save his job, because for the last few weeks Stoke have been really poor, and to some, it's a surprise that he's still in charge at Stoke, but he needs to make sure that he puts in good performances and gets the results so that he can keep his job. Birmingham, they beat West Brom by 1-0. West Brom continue to have a really poor season, and Steve Bruce continues to not have an impact at West Brom, and again West Brom don't score. As for Birmingham, they didn't create too many chances here, but Lyle Taylor scored a fantastic penalty, and he's having a really good season at Birmingham, and I wouldn't be surprised if he stays at Birmingham for next season. Then you've got Darby, who again continue to be in with a shout of staying up. They beat Preston by 1-0, creating an XG of 2.58, so that just shows how dominant Derby were, and fair play to them, because throughout the season, obviously, they've been in the relegation zone and they've been fighting to stay up, and they're still within a shout, so that's a massive credit to Wayne Rooney and the Derby players. Max Bird being sent off is a massive blow, because, in my opinion, he's one of their best players. So, for him to be suspended for 3 games is a big blow for Derby. But, like I said, they're still within a shout of staying up. But as for Preston, they've not put in good performances recently, and that kind of needs to change, to be honest. They'll want to make sure that they don't just tail off towards the end of the season. But at the same time, they don't have too much to play for, to be fair. Cardiff 0, Swansea 4. Probably the most surprising result of the weekend, given that Swansea scored 4 goals and were completely dominant. Especially given that it was a derby. You'd suspect that Cardiff would have been more up for it, given that this was really their only thing they had left to play for in the season. And to be honest, it's almost a big task for Steve Morrison to win back the appreciation and the support of the fans, because, like I said, this is their only meaningful game now for Cardiff, because they probably won't go down. And for them to lose in the manner of which they did was really, really poor. And even if Cardiff put in good performances from now to the end of the season, Cardiff fans won't forget this result, and Swansea fans definitely won't forget this result. Russell Martin described it as his best day as a manager in his career, and fair play to him. Swansea performed really well, and especially their first goal was really, really nice, really well taken. So fair play to Swansea for winning that derby. It's the first time one of the two Welsh clubs have done the double over one another, so Swansea have the bragging rights in that sense. And finally, probably the most significant game of the weekend, Barnsley drew 1-1 at home against Reading. The result definitely suits Reading more, given that they keep Barnsley down in the relegation zone and the gap's still 5 points. And from a Barnsley's point of view, if they were to get out of the relegation zone and stay up, they really had to win this game to close the gap. And as it is now, Barnsley will probably struggle to stay up. They could still stay up, don't get me wrong. They've still got to play Peterborough and they've still obviously got 7 games left, but it's going to be a lot harder for them to stay up. But they almost nicked it at the end, and Tom McIntyre did so well to clear it off the line. But overall, you probably would say a draw was a fair result. It wasn't a pretty game, not one for the purist, but like I said, a draw is probably a fair result, and it leaves Reading in a much better position to stay up than it did before the game, because they still are 5 points away from Barnsley. So that was the Championship football. I really appreciate you guys watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you later.